But then Jesus goes on to say, but if you do not repent, if you do not change your ways, you too will perish. But note what he is not saying. He is not saying that God is going to get you. He is simply saying if you continue along this pathway, you're going to end up with a disastrous outcome. Not because it's God's choice, but because you would not listen. And you would not change your ways. Thinking theologically today, many theologians are seriously questioning that image of God as the tyrannical judge who is waiting to pounce upon you for every infraction that you may have committed in life. Sorry about that, folks. This thing is... Instead of seeing sickness and calamity and poverty as God's punitive actions, they see these things as natural consequences that happen in life. It's a very different thing to say that actions have consequences than it is to say that God will punish you for that. So today I challenge you to move beyond theological thinking and to add theological doing to your faith journey. To repent means to change directions. It means to go in a different way. So let's see how that might apply in our world today if actions have consequences. Well, if actions have consequences and we continue to pollute our air with the burning of fossil fuels, the consequence will be increased global warming and the destruction of the environment. If we continue to let chemical fertilizers run off from agricultural wastewater to pollute our water system, we will poison our water supply. If we continue to build cities in the desert and use water from the aquifer levels to supply their needs, we will have an increasing water shortage. If we continue to use plastic indiscriminately and discard it carelessly, we will continue to pollute our world and our oceans. I am told by a friend of mine who is a ship's captain that when you traverse the oceans, you can come across an island of pollution, of nothing but plastic, that's larger than the state of Texas. If we continue to put more and more guns into the hands of people, we will have more gun violence. If we continue to allow the rich to get richer by passing laws that are favorable to them and detrimental to the poor, we will have an ever-widening gap between rich and poor, and the middle class will continue to be squeezed out of existence, and the ranks of the poor will continue to swell. If nations continue to trust in military might to solve their differences and continue to build weapons of mass destruction, we will move inevitably towards a global nuclear or chemical war. And if we continue to live lives absorbed in self-preoccupation and forget the well-being of the whole community, democracy will eventually die. None of that is God punishing us. That is simply a consequence of the actions that we take. But wait, did you listen to the gospel? If we repent. If we turn around our behavior, if we act in a different way, then actions still will have consequences, but they will be different consequences. Did you hear the gospel in that lesson that was read? The gardener is waiting for us to wake up. He's not chopping down the tree. The gardener is waiting for us to put a little manure around it. In other words, to tend it and care for it. And if we do, those actions have consequences as well. So if citizens like you and me and our neighbors around us demand that our legislatures ban assault rifles from ownership of individuals and limit the amount of bullets that a clip of ammunition may hold, then the number of gun deaths will decrease in our culture. Actions do have consequences. And if we turn to alternative sources of energy and learn to conserve and use water wisely so we can work towards restoration of the aquifer and ensure safe drinking water for all, actions have consequences. And if we invested in peace instead of war, if we invested in people instead of corporations, if we cared as much about hungry people and homeless people as we do about sports and entertainment, if we cared as much about community as we do about privacy, think of the consequences that would result from those actions. So this morning I say to you, don't just think theologically, act theologically as well. Repent. Turn around. Go in a different direction. This world may be in a mess, but it's not God's doing. It is our mess. God, on the other hand, the patient and waiting gardener, God is calling us to wake up. God is the prophetic voice of the prophet, calling us to come back to God's economics of sufficiency and gratitude. God is the mother hen trying to warn us of impending danger if we fail to repent. God is the waiting Father, standing at the gates with a broken heart, waiting for the prodigal son to return, to repent, to turn around and go in a different direction, to follow the way of God instead of the way of the world. God is also the one who rejoices with the angels whenever even one sinner repents and goes in a different direction. Listen, is not this the fast that I choose? To loose the bonds of injustice, to undo the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free and break every yoke? Is it not to share your bread with the hungry and bring the homeless poor into your house? When you see the naked, to cover them and not to hide yourself from your own kin? Then your light shall break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up quickly. Your vindicator shall go before you. The glory of the Lord shall be your rear guard. Then you shall call, and the Lord will answer. You shall cry for help, and he will say, "Here I am." If you remove the yoke from among you, the pointing of the finger, the speaking of evil, if you offer your food for the hungry and satisfy the needs of the afflicted, then your light shall rise in the darkness, and your gloom be like the noonday. The Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your needs in parched places and make your bones strong. And you shall be like a watered garden, like a spring of water, whose waters never fail. listen. God is calling us to renounce, to turn around, to return to the Lord our God, who is gracious, merciful, slow to anger, and abounds in steadfast love.